One. This week on The Big Show, the debut of Genius, Aretha, the 8-part limited series that chronicles the life and legacy of the Queen of Soul, will air tomorrow night. We preview the series and discuss her trailblazing legacy and cultural impact. Today, Sirius XM host Dave Dickinson will join us as we talk Franklin's career as well as the week that was in entertainment, all on episode 447, Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go. All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. I am Tim Gordon, joined by co-host Charles Kirkland Jr. Charles, what's going on?
Man, I'm. This is like the weirdest week in the world. You know, the March Madness started, and I don't even care. Haven't watched the game yet, but I'm here. So,
all right, and we also have Wilson Morales from BlackFilmAndTV.com. Wilson, welcome to the show. How are you?
Always good to come down from my stratosphere, my kingdomness, and and, display my knowledge onto the show.
Wilson's in a good mood. We like that. And we also welcome in not just a radio executive and a colleague, but also a good friend of mine, Dave Dickinson from Sirius XM. You are the program director, am I correct, for Heart and Soul?
I'm the assistant program director for Heart and Soul, but I do program Kirk Franklin's Praise and Silk, which is like all slow music, slow R&B.
You see the look on my face, right? Assistant? I thought you was the man.
I'm next to the man.
he's still the man. He's just
basically saying like, "Oh, you're not." So he's kind of comparing you to Pence, like, "Oh, you not the man?" No.
Man, I'm saying Dave has always been the man. The guy who correctly checked me way back in the day. I would always try to challenge Dave and said, "Man, that ain't no hit." And then Dave would just explain to me. And then a couple of weeks would go by, and I go, "My bad, bro. You're right." So Dave's got a golden ear for music, man. So, bro, I really wanted you on today, and thank you for agreeing to do this. But before we get into Genius Aretha, I just wanted to have Wilson lead us off with what's going on in entertainment this week, because now as more people are starting to be vaccinated, I think the number hit 100 million a day. That New York has opened up with a limited capacity theaters. Los Angeles has opened up with I think 25% capacity. Marvel is still moving forward, I think, with plans to have Black Widow on May 5th. So Wilson, what can you tell us, man? What's going on?
Well, I don't know if you discussed it. Obviously, we just recently had the Oscar nominations come out, and there was a record amount of Black talent that got nominated, 25. The one blip was that films like One Night in Miami and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom did not make the cut. A year where you can nominate up to 10, but they haven't done so in years. But usually they go 8 or 9. That did not make the cut in a year where we had a lot of good films from Black talent, starring Black talent. The only film that made the cut was Judas and the Black Messiah. They got 5 or 6 nominations. One of those nominations, which happened to be a surprise, was Lakeith Stanfield nominated for Best Supporting Actor, along with his co-star Daniel Kaluuya, which many people have debated, if they're supporting, who's the lead of the movie? It's sort of like.
But the big one, though, and you're going to get to it, Wilson. The big one, when you talked about One Night in Miami, was as soon as I heard Thomas Vinterberg's name mentioned in the director race, I started screaming in the house, "Who the hell is Thomas Vinterberg?" Now, I went back and
watched. Now, I was about to say, Tim, for somebody who covers all movies, Thomas ain't no newbie in the game. He's a well-known Danish filmmaker who's had films nominated before, including 1998 Celebration. He's had other films. Now, they raise more.
Watch this, Wilson. I didn't mean to cut you off, but all I'm saying is that throughout the award season, and I'm talking the Globes, Critics' Choice Awards, I'm talking about other critics groups. All I'm saying is nobody was talking about this film that he made this year. Now, they were talking about Mads Mikkelsen for possibly best actor, But I didn't get the sense that there was this groundswell for Vinterberg to overtake Sorkin and Regina King.
Here's the thing. A couple of years ago, there was a director of Cold War. In the year they had 2 foreign directors nominated for Best Director. And so like when and for years, there's a lot of complaints about the Academy. Like we still don't have a Best Black Director winner, and lack of nominees. We still have under 10 Black directors. But for foreign films, they were only limited to the international film department and nothing more. Every now and then you'll get a film nominated for Best Picture, but never Best Director, and you'll get a nomination for Best Actor. So if you're going to talk about Best Picture for another round and you're including and just talk about Best Actor, why not the director? Now, nevertheless, in regards to Regina King, and I happen to know some of these categories and some of these groups, I think the director of Promising Young Woman, Emerald Fennell, took Regina's vote, but I don't think it would have been a harder task to get 3 women nominated in that category compared to David Fincher and Aaron Sorkin and Lee Isaac Chung or Spike Lee or Shaka King, or the director of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Regina King was being talked about a lot, but I didn't see her in terms of top 5. Now, in terms of Thomas Winterberg, the Academy has allowed and added more international directors in a director's branch. And that may have been the thing to like, okay, we got to get one of ours in there. I could be wrong. I'm just speculating.
Okay.
But
A week ago, we had 2 Oscar winners on this show, Russell Williams and Oscar-winning screenwriter Kevin Wilmot.
But they're not directors.
And Russell Williams said last week on the show about how prickly the director's branch is. And we just talked about this. So as soon as the nominations were announced on Monday, he sent me a text. He said, see what I told you? So he was right. So the director's branch is a very strange branch. And in one regard, we should be happy that 2 women actually are nominated this year. But, I just think that when you talk about the absence of Fincher, you talk about the absence of Sorkin, you talk about the absence of King. I'm not saying, because I watched another round, I think it's a really good film. But again, I can say the same thing with Judas and the Black Messiah. If you want to talk about a Best Picture nominee, why was Shaka King passed over for Best Director?
Did David Fincher not get? Didn't he get nominated?
I think Fincher got nominated for Mank, okay. But I'm just saying that in the other cases of Sorkin and King, you had those situations. These are people that a lot of industry insiders, unlike Wilson Morales, who finished number 4 in his Oscar picks.
Number 2. Let's get it correct. Number 2.
You finished number 2?
Number 2. So let's keep it correct. I finished number 2.
Oh
2 is not bad, baby.
There was Nick Vinterberg. That was one of your choices.
I missed by 1 vote.
Sasha Stone from is it Awards Daily?
Yes.
Yeah, she actually finished number 1. Wilson finished,
and I tied for 2 with 2 other people. So.
Okay, so basically, what Wilson's trying to tell me is that Tim, shut the hell up. I was number 2. All right. Okay. I still think it's kind of interesting, but
there's a difference between 95 and 70.
Pretty much. So what else is going on, man?
Well, like as you mentioned, theaters now opening up, and I guess in a few weeks we'll start to see whether or not the box office is picking up. No one has pushed their film back. I think there was one film that got pushed back. But but for the most part, there's a wait and see as more cities start to increase the percentage of how many people can walk in. It's just a wait and see now as far as what movies are going to still be out there. It's a quiet time now because there's no big films out there yet. We're about to get Godzilla versus Kong, and that is a big screen type of movie. So we'll see. Warner Brothers is always the first to try to test the audience. They did so last year with Tenet. And now that more theaters are opening up, Godzilla will be another test to say, hey, are people coming to see that? Or should we still keep our HBO Max platform, and expand it there. More people will want to see, like right now, onto theaters get more in terms of the box office. The playing field is level. So a lot more people can see The United States of Billie Holiday. A lot more people can see Judas and the Black Messiah, because typically those movies would not be seen by a lot of people if you had to pay for it. Because you can't. Most theater owners are not going to put that in 4,000 theaters. They'll put it in the theaters in which they think they'll do well, but they'll bank on the big budgeted movies. That's always been the bread and butter. So it's a wait and see. It's definitely a wait and see.
All right, Wilson. Well, I appreciate that, man, that you lead off every show, man, by giving us a rundown. It's a very interesting time we're in right now, despite the fact that, as I said earlier, we have that 100 million vaccinated. We got spring break coming up, and we will know a lot more about our progress in the next couple of weeks. If we're going to respike, you've got other different strains that now are starting to come abroad. Come up here domestically. So we'll see. At some point, if the numbers continue to tamp down, we can smile. I got a call earlier this week that we may be back in studio doing shows maybe as early as June or July. So I don't know. We'll just keep our fingers crossed. So, all right. So here we go, man. Let's talk now Genius Aretha. And for people who are not in the know, Genius is a series, is a kind of an annual thing that National Geo does. So they've done, I think, Albert Einstein, Picasso have had Genius series, but now for the first time in their third season, they're doing Aretha Franklin. Next year, they're going to have Dr. Martin Luther King will be a Genius series. But at least 3 of us have had an opportunity to see it. Wilson, you watched the 7 preview episodes, right?
Yes, 7 out of 8. Yes.
7 out of 8. Charles, you as well?
Yes.
And I as well. So we're not going to do any spoilers today. But the one thing I will admit, Wilson and Charles and Dave, is that as I was watching it, I was doing the research to see how accurate Suzanne Lori Parks' screenplay was, or the idea for it was, the story. And for the most part, everything that we watched on screen, you could kind of go on research or Wikipedia, and it's all there verifiable that, it was almost as if she wrote the screenplay, not using not talking to the family, by going through Wikipedia and going, oh, that happened. Let me put that in the story.
You get that through a lot of biopics, and I wonder whether or not, like, do they think and they expand the situation? They're like, oh, it's like, oh, this is what we know. Now let's expand it,
Right.
And so, yes, but some of the, but Wikipedia, I can't say everything's accurate, but for the most part it is. So it's a matter of now getting actual testimony by through your research, whether it's a family member or anybody else, right, to go into what you're going to shoot.
Well, so my issue, and I had 2 with it, I think for the most part, and I was very conflicted, which is why I was not able to produce a review for this, right? I tried for 4 days to write one, and every time I tried to sit down and write, my personal feelings about the Queen's music, and then the images that I was watching, the two just, I'm still not able to wrap my arms around and correlate her as a performer versus her as a human being. And I understand her as a human being. She has flaws and different idiosyncrasies. But the issue, and I kept trying to figure out what it was about it that didn't necessarily work. And I think not only is this limited series going to have an issue with it, but Respect, which is the big screen film that's coming out in August, starring Jennifer Hudson, is going to have the same issue. You can be Aretha Franklin as a person and even sing Aretha Franklin's songs, but there's only one Aretha Franklin. That voice can't be replicated. And what made Aretha Franklin special to me was that the songs that she sung, literally, she made you feel what she was singing. They just weren't words on paper. It was the feeling that her songs imbued that touched people. So as I'm talking about this, Dave Dickinson, I'll go to you, man, as a person who works in music. Am I right about this, that you can find an actress who can closely resemble her, who can sing songs that she's performed, but they can't sing it the way or make you feel the way that Aretha would make you feel.
You're right. A lot of people can get close, but they called her the Queen of Soul for a reason. She had so much drama, passion, love in her voice. It didn't matter what genre of music she was singing. She made you feel it. She drew it out of you, or she drew it out of herself and put it out for the world.
Now the other thing,
I said this. I was saying this to you before. I think Cynthia Erivo is actually not a very good casting choice for this role because she can play the person, but if you're asking her to sing the songs, it's a stretch. I think it would have been better if they had gotten an actress and then had the songs dubbed in, have Aretha's actual voice played, because that would have had a more of an authentic feel to it. And I mean, I love Cynthia Erivo. She does a great job, but I just don't get the feeling from her performance that I would from Aretha.
Wilson, you shake your head.
Can I just jump in and say, Cynthia Erivo is an actress who can sing. And I know she's done some stuff, but I take a slice from Andra Day doing the Billie Holiday story, and she's a singer who can sing, and she has some of Billie Holiday's her feeling and her singing, and the voices are comparable.
Well, wait a minute, Dave. Dave, let me jump in for a second. I agree with you that I thought that Billie Holiday's, that Audra Day did a really good job of really coming close to singing Billie Holiday. But I think another part, I would say a lot of the public is not really familiar with Billie Holiday in ways that they're familiar with Aretha Franklin. We've heard Aretha Franklin's music for like the last 50, 40 years. We haven't heard a lot of Billie Holiday outside of maybe Strange Fruit and some of her other songs.
You're right.
So, I mean, does that play a role in kind of like how Audra Day might get a pass in a way that Cynthia Erivo won't?
It plays a small role in it, but Audra Day is a singer who is now acting, which is the reverse of, Cynthia Erivo might, and I'm not familiar with all of her work, but she's just not a singer to that magnitude where Jennifer Hudson may do it much more justice, and she might be able to mimic Aretha Franklin a little bit more. It won't be the same, but
All right, so Charles or Wilson, go ahead. Wilson, you were about to...
My 2 cents is, one, you can't go into like, it's not going to be Aretha, because then you won't get any biopics, especially when you're talking about singers. The whole dubbing of the voice, you see how social media is now, like, oh, you can't find any singer, It's like, I don't think the public wants anything dubbed at this point, like, especially when there are plenty of singers out there. In terms of Cynthia's performance, now we all know when it comes to whether it's a movie or television, it's all about sell in a show. You can find anybody that can probably look the part of Aretha. I'm sure there's millions or thousands of voices that sound like Aretha, but you want eyeballs on your screen. One way or the other. Cynthia Erivo has been hot for the last 5-6 years. So just like some of these movies, you go with who's hot right now that's going to grab your attention, And so the question is whether or not she can embody the character. Because when you're watching it, for those like Dave who know Aretha's music and can add more to it in terms of the singing, the voice, and all of that stuff, for others who do not know Aretha's personal background outside of the songs that she sang. Today's millennials just know some of the songs. Older folks know the meaning of those songs, and so when you're watching this series, you're getting a lot of the backstory about Aretha and what she went through, as a singer, as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter. And that's where the performance of Cynthia Erivo comes in, because there's not a lot of singing in here, because I don't think they got the rights to all of the songs that you would expect to hear.
Bingo. So that's what I was about to hit. So I just wanted to double check, because I wanted to make sure I didn't talk in error. When you said, I think Charles raised the point, why didn't they dub her voice? when Jamie Foxx played Ray, they dubbed, that was all Ray Charles is singing except for stuff that they did in the early years that Jamie sang. But that was Ray Charles's music that Jamie just sort of kind of dubbed over, like, you know, kind of lip sync. So I think that there is an argument to be made that I think one of the winning ingredients, if you're going to do an Aretha story, is that you got to have Aretha's music. And part of the issue you also heard is that the family wasn't really on board with this Genius series in ways that they're on board with Respect, which is going to come out in August. So they have the right.
Susan Laurie Parks, she does say this. Here's the thing. We don't know which family members. So we're reading this stuff. The question is, if you're going to say family members, Tim, you got to spit out exactly who.
Well, I'm saying what I'm reading. They didn't specify which members of the family. That's like when Scorsese tried to do a Marley biopic, they said it died because they couldn't get all of the members of the Marley family to sign on.
You know, so yeah, and that's probably a situation. I think with Aretha, you know, she's had a few, you know, she's had children. I know one of the children was not involved, but the others aren't talking. So it could be a situation where, like, you know, we got paid, you didn't, now you're making your gripe. I could be wrong, you know, but I haven't heard a case where all of the family members, I've heard certain members of the family, and you get that with biopics. You know, you get that.
But no, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was the greater point I was making, it wasn't just about the voice being dubbed, that they could have used that. But the other issue is that to that point, that's one of the other issues that I have with this limited series, that I think that a lot of the songs that people really wanted to hear aren't included in this series. And for an example, the one glaring admission to me, and it's not necessarily just a song, but it's an album. When she first went to Columbia in 1967, and we see her at some point playing around, I'm not going to tell you which song she plays around with, but she's playing around with the arrangement for one of the songs from that album. The fact that that's such a landmark album, Dave, talk about her debut album and her partnership with Jerry Wexler, and I can't pronounce the other guy's name, Amat Madjarin or whatever his name is, that were the chief executives who helped her find her sound down in Muscle Shoals, where Respect, I Never Loved a Man, Spanish Heart. I mean, all of these songs were on this album that literally launched her into superstardom.
You and Dave know that stuff. Young millennials are not looking forward. They don't know this stuff. You know, Grant, I hear you, Tim. I hear you. No,
but I'm saying, if you're going to do a biopic, right, and you want us to understand the life of somebody, you think they don't know Aretha? They knew nothing about Ray Charles. I had to learn Ray Charles before I even went and saw Ray, because that happened way before I was born. So I'm saying that this album, Dave, I wanted Dave, you cut Dave off. Let Dave explain to you the significance of this album from 1967, which was her first foray with Atlantic.
Well, that was her being born into the recording business, coming from that gospel background, and she was much more bluesy at that time. So they helped bring out her sound. They helped her get comfortable with studio. They helped.
I'm not paying Wilson any attention, man. Don't let Wilson throw you off your game.
He got me going, man. He's like a Spike Lee Jr. to me. But he's and happy birthday to Spike anyway. He's 64 as of taping. That album, it just introduced her into the recording, but she had it in her all the time. I mean, from traveling with her father, being, growing up in that church setting, it just introduced her to everything except the recording studio, the way that they helped her be introduced to it.
All right, so Wilson.
Wait a minute, before you, I'm going to jump on Wilson, because Wilson is talking about millennials. This series is not for millennials. They're not going to watch this. This is for the people who know Aretha, who love Aretha. These are the people that's going to watch this. All these millennials, they're too busy looking in their phones to want to check out this series. So it is for us who grew up with Aretha, and they should have dedicated more time to that groundbreaking album. That album is the same as Janet Jackson's Control. When she broke out, this is what established her in the market. And I think there should have been more time dedicated to the compositions that were in that album, how that album came to be.
So hold on a second. Let me give this to Wilson, because Wilson's saying he's downplaying it. RESPECT, respect. I never loved a man. Dr. Feelgood. Do right woman, do right man. That was all on that debut album at Columbia, which launched her. I mean, Dave is right. Aretha Franklin had been, when you watch the limited series, Columbia had her as a jazz artist, right? And she was trying to break out and find her sound. And she goes down, and with Jerry Wexler, all that stuff is true. And she goes down there, and Wexler, who had worked with Ray Charles, helps her find her sound. And there's a one great scene where you see her trying to find it. And when she finds it, boy, does she find it. And that's why I said the lack of the music in here, to me, I would have preferred more about her as the artist than more of her as the background stuff. The background stuff to me was a little,
and I believe without seeing the movie, I believe I know which album you're talking about. And I had the advantage of talking to Aretha and asking her, because one of my favorite songs is on that. It's her rendition of This Bitter Earth. And I think it's on that, or it's on one of her Columbia recordings. And she had told me that was just something that she was playing around with. She was just experimenting in that case. So, fortunately enough, I have had a chance to sit down with her. I had the chance to sit down with her a couple of times before she left us. And I asked her about that, because that was always one of my favorite treatments of that song, just the blues, the soul that she put into that. And she said, for like many great singers, they downplay a lot of the stuff they do. And she was like, I was just playing around. I was playing the piano, and I wanted to see how that would come out. So she just was experimenting with that.
Now, for Wilson's sake as well, that's the Rolling Stone has that as one of its 500 greatest albums of all time. It's actually number 83. So this is the highest album that Rolling Stone has on their list. So when I talk about it being a landmark album, I'm not just making that up. And the fact that, as I said, I think that's a big miss. And if you don't have the rights to it, I understand that you probably can't touch many of it. Now, the other album, Wilson, which you probably have a greater appreciation for, is the entire episode that they devote to her doing Amazing Grace and the whole backstory of that. Now, I rewatched the documentary yesterday, and I think I said it at the time that she was 28 or 29 when she did that album. And I think her voice was perfect on there. She was singing gospel. When I talk about the emotion and feeling, Cynthia Erivo, I think, does a really good job with what Aretha did on Amazing Grace. But when you listen to her sing that album, you can't duplicate that. Nobody can duplicate that.
And I think that's the issue with a lot of musical biopics, that if you don't have the rights to the music that people want to hear, you're not batting at 100% or 1,000%. There was a movie that came out a couple of years ago on Jimi Hendrix, played by Andre Benjamin, in which they didn't have the rights to the music. So it's like you're watching a movie about Jimi Hendrix with no Jimi Hendrix music. And it doomed the movie, because it's like, what is this? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, if you're going to watch a movie about Whitney Houston, better start singing, because I don't want to hear about everything else. I want to hear some songs, So I think, with the song, if they didn't have the rights to the song, but everything else, it's sort of like, what do you do? Like if there's going to be,
you don't move forward with the project.
But it's tough, it's a tough thing. Like when you want to do it, and it's like, how long can you wait before somebody decides, they let it go? And, and I don't know who holds the rights, and I don't know what they hold out for. I know I think Clive Davis is involved with this one, or the movie. I'm not sure.
He's one of the executive producers.
So I'm sure that like he was able to greenlight some of the songs, but not some of the early songs, as you mentioned, that people want to know about. And I'm sure that's going to be brought out in terms of like, oh, we wanted to hear this, we wanted to hear that. So, like I said, it's an entertaining thing, film series. It's now wholeheartedly perfect for reasons being that like she doesn't sing like Aretha. They don't have this song. The emotion is not there. Everybody's gonna have their reasons for it. I don't know what the reviews were for Picasso or Albert Einstein. But those guys are not. They weren't as more modern to us as Aretha was.
Right.
Because we saw Aretha, within years of her life. It wasn't like she had been in some home or we had not heard from her in years and then she passed away. She was with us up until her death. So like that's why I think a lot more people have a connection and a lot more people have a lot to say.
Well, I think, and I'll direct this to Dave. I think it's very difficult. You heard me say earlier, using the analogy between Billie Holiday and Aretha Franklin, right? I think to that degree, it would be hard for people like Prince, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, anybody that people, our generation has seen a lot of. It would be hard to recreate stories about those people because no casting would work because you can't find anybody, to emulate those voices. And then we know too much about these people in real life to see some actor come along and try to portray them. So am I right about that, Dave? And then I want you to also discuss Aretha Franklin's legacy because we are in Women's Month, and Aretha Franklin is so groundbreaking for so many other female artists and so many other Black artists. Talk about her vast contributions. So that's kind of a two-parter, man. So my apologies.
So yeah, like Wilson was saying, she lived among us. She was with us up until her death, and so we know too much about it, just like we know and kind of grew up with Prince and Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston for the most part. I mean, it's hard to have somebody play their roles and we're not say that's not the way it happened. Just like you and I, we know folks who have had people in their family, their stories told, and we know the truth. The what really happened. So it's hard, when a person is one of our contemporaries to make a movie about them. Now, for Women's History Month, yeah, Aretha was she was a boss before it was a boss. She was maybe the first woman I know of color that really could be called a diva. Well, the first woman I can think of that could have been called a diva, a boss. She owned, she called all the shots. She was a perfectionist on stage and always kind of laid out exactly how she wanted things to go and wouldn't move until things were the way she liked them. So she was really in control, and people, yeah, they might have bucked up a little bit, but they weren't really mad because when she delivered, she really delivered. Eccentric to a point, maybe, but at the same time, she was, what artist and what creator is not a eccentric in a way? There's so many people. I mean, Prince, Michael, all of them have some ways about them, but all those folks and people now all looked up to Aretha Franklin. She, I've heard stories of her in the studio with Whitney recording, and she go into character. They did a duet. I forgot the name, where Whitney was a young lady trying to rap to Aretha's boyfriend and Aretha being the queen. And even though, Aretha was close with Whitney's mom, she acted like she didn't even know Whitney when she got to the studio, just so she could stay in character, bring it out on the song. And they were going toe to toe, and the song was produced by Narada Michael Walden. And he actually told this story, and they went so hard at each other, but and after Whitney left, Aretha was like, I kind of went hard on her, didn't I? I kind of gave her a hard time, but she did it on purpose. That's the kind of person that Aretha was. She knew how to get the most out of herself and give the most to us and put it into a recording. So, everything that we hear, we can feel from this woman. And she was truly a woman. And for all the, times that she might have barked at somebody, the times that I was around her, I'm sure, Tim, you were around her too, a couple of times, she was a sweetheart because she loved guys. So, it was nice being around her. I enjoyed being around her.
Well, it's funny, man. When I was, this is before I came to work with you, Dave. I was over at Radio 1, and Joe Madison knew her very well. So he sent me down to do an interview for her for his show. And I interviewed her at Constitution Hall, there at empty Constitution Hall. She was doing sound check. I sat down with her. We talked for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And I told her in the middle of the interview, I said, my favorite song by you is Angel. So when we got done, she walked up to her band and queued up Angel, and she sang it to me while I was sitting in a box after doing this interview, which was one of the highlights. I was like, wow, Aretha Franklin is singing to me right now.
Yeah.
But I will interestingly say part of my conflict, and without doing any spoilers, there are some warts that are in Genius Aretha, right? And I'm being sarcastic because there's a lot of warts. But one of the warts, man, again, without going too much in depth, is that they show a very petty side, I would call, of the Queen. And when I say petty, I'm talking about petty to the point where the Queen might just step on you without even caring, So there's an incident around the film Sparkle. You guys know what I'm talking about, where Curtis Mayfield had initially reached out to somebody else to record the soundtrack. And when Miss Franklin got wind of that, she went behind that person's back, who I'm not going to tell you who that person was, and called Curtis Mayfield up, which they show in the film or in the series, which wound up getting her the soundtrack, which I thought was really, really stinky. Wilson, Charles, anybody, any? Is it just me that thought that was stinky?
As we know, things of like, I'm sure there have been stories like this within the music industries, when, hey, people got to get ahead one way or the other. I don't know how true that particular part of the movie, story is. We will have to see when it airs and what people say about it, but it's interesting, like Susan can go more into that as far as, where'd you get this story from? Or you just don't just throw it in there. I'm sure there's some truth to it. Don't just throw it in there, because you're going to have tongues wagging like, oh, why would you do that to the legacy of Aretha?
Hey, that's me stabbing somebody in the back.
Hey, look, you don't get to be the Queen without taking out a few of the usurpers that come along. So
yeah, at the end of the day, anybody who's been
successful on a couple people. I mean, that's what it's about sometimes in the record industry.
Well, I want to say step on people. It's more or less like, when you're good at your game, you just keep the foot on the pedal and you don't stop. That's what it is.
So
I always say,
you gonna cut my throat, man, to get an interview? Is that what you're telling me?
I go, the opposite of success is hate. And I'm sure, Dave, in your business and all of our business, whether we get an interview and we get, in your business, maybe a song or something plays, like if you got it first, like you tap yourself like, because you were able to work for it. You
right.
Get it,
and if I can, that's kind of stuff happens in that business, because if you know that something is going to be big or something fits you, or you can give it that essence. Yeah, she, like I said, she was a boss, so she wasn't going to take it. She wanted to do that album. You should have, recognized that. I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know exactly who she stepped on to get there. But sometimes we all have to do a little something that's not 100% kosher just to to get where we need to go. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Dave, you saw everybody smiling when you were saying, I don't know what you stepped on. We like, we do. And it was
in today's media, in today's social media, if it got found out, cancel.
Oh yeah, man. That was not, and that's not the first time they show it in there, because there's another song, the Preacher Man, the son of what was it?
Preacher Man.
Son of a Preacher Man. So it happened before. So Aretha, I will say she was a boss, but there's some dynamics, as I said, that it didn't cast her in the best of lights.
Well, you don't want. But here's the thing: nobody could be perfect. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody wants to see a film, where we know them as great singers, but they weren't perfect. At the end of the day, when you saw Ray, Ray wasn't perfect. For a lot of us, you just knew the music. For people, they don't care about their personal lives; they just know the music. And then you show them how flawed they are. Everybody's flawed. You can't show somebody to be always the goody two shoes. Oh, it's great mom, great singer. It's like, no, nobody's perfect. And when you're successful, there are some toes, you step on that, like, they don't, got rubbed the wrong way. So like sometimes you need to highlight that to say, hey, despite the success, each person is not a perfect person, for one degree or another. And I'm sure you'll get that with people who are currently living today that we love, but we're like, okay, we don't know the other side of them. I'm sure that will come out down the road, when they pass or whatever. Right now it's all about hiding your mistakes, because today's media is like, really? Out of here. You know what I'm saying?
Now wait a minute. We're lucky enough to actually have a preacher on the show today, and Charles Kirkland. And I was thinking about you a lot, because this to me is going to be the other key talking point when people watch the miniseries, how her father, the Reverend C.L. Franklin, is portrayed in here. And I was so bothered by this that I called my own pastor up this week. I was like, Pastor, you need to watch this, man, because is this how you're supposed to act? Charles?
Before Charles talk, I'm like, there's Greenleaf. It's like, yo, pastors never.
No, bro. We watched Greenleaf. Pastor Greenleaf or Bishop Greenleaf wasn't doing the kind of stuff they were showing C.L. Franklin doing, bro.
But these guys are never the holy saint you want them to be. Everybody has flaws, and it's like, oh, really?
We knew this was happening, though, because before he passed, Ray Charles told you he went to the church and they were wilder than what he was used to, and Ray was a wild dude, and so he said that it was like. He explained, he laid it out exactly what was going on at the church.
But Dave, there's a great line in there from Reverend James Cleveland, played by Omar Dorsey from Queen Sugar, who says, yeah, man, he was good on a Sunday, but he liked a good time on Saturday night. Charles.
I mean, come on, how good is a story if there isn't some juice in it? So, I mean, you got to have some kind of conflict. And unfortunately, sometimes there are preachers out there that are, I don't know, interesting to portray. And I'm sure Courtney Vance had fun in playing C.L. Franklin.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's uncomfortable. And the relationship between the two of them is prickly at times. And, it is what it is. So it's delicious to have.
It's what's going to get people watching and talking. It's going to get what people, because like I said, we know a lot about Aretha, but there's not so much about C.L. Franklin. When they start watching the character in this series, they're like, what? Google his name, Wikipedia, like, word.
But again, it's about the authenticity. They got to tell the true story. There's always some, and I think Dave can tell you, there's people who are tortured become the best musicians. People who have problems have the best. The best have the worst backstory sometimes, and so this is just part of her story. And so it wouldn't even be entertaining to watch if there wasn't this in it. So it's there. It's there.
Now, respect.
There's a word. There's a reason that they call people, struggling artists or tortured artists, because from that pain, from that angst, that's where you get that great music.
Right. I was gonna say the film Respect drops, I think, on August 13th. It stars Jennifer Hudson, as we said. Marlon Wayans will play her husband, Ted White, in this version. And then Forrest Whitaker is playing Reverend C.L. Franklin. So already the casting of that is just interesting to me because knowing what we know, or at least what we've shown about that character or that person in this film, the Forrest Whitaker is a far different actor than Courtney B. Vance. So I'm anxious to see what he does with that. I have no clue. I mean, not no clue. I have no problems with Jennifer Hudson, no disrespect to Cynthia Erivo, who I think sings really, really well, but Jennifer Hudson comes from a similar background to that of Aretha Franklin, and Aretha Franklin wanted her to do the film. So I think she will be able to get really, really close to Franklin in a way, or at least make us feel it in a way that Erivo made, or, that a lot of us didn't think Erivo made us feel it. I think Hudson can hit that aspect. Marlon Wayans, though, playing Ted White, the husband, is not necessarily a bad casting choice because I know he can do dramatic work. We all watched him in
20 years ago. 20 plus years ago.
Watch this. You either can do it or you can't do it. I don't care if you did it 20 years ago. We know he can do it. What was the name of the film? Where he played the buddy who was taking heroin.
I know. It's Darren Aronofsky.
It's a really good performance by him. So I know he can do the dramatic work. So I'll be anxious to come back in August and look at this situation again after having found out what the public thinks about this and then comparing the two projects. And the fact that she has two projects that are out so recent after she's passed. She passed in 2018, and had it not been for COVID, Genius would have been released last year, and I think Respect would have been as well. So it's a very interesting, it set my mind to thinking a lot of things about Aretha Franklin's legacy. And I think her final hit, Dave, am I correct, is when Lauryn Hill produced and wrote A Rose Is Still a Rose for her back in 97?
That was her last original hit. Clive put out an album with her and duets. It was like remixes of a lot of her songs, which was the last time I sat with her. That was 2018.
So I would honestly say, and Dave, you correct me if I'm wrong, I count Atlantic as really when she started making hits, because I don't think she had any hits with Columbia. She had some good songs, but she didn't have any like monster hits.
Right. And I think for a brief moment, I don't know if she released anything, for a brief moment, she was on Motown for a very brief moment. Then Columbia, that's where she was, that was her foundation. And then Atlantic was, they gave her the freedom to do a lot of other stuff. And that's where she really had all the hits, like you said.
So for Wilson, who showed us like all of the cool stuff that he got, that's all the Aretha stuff, I just want to clarify again, 1967 to 1997 were the years that she had all these songs, all these hits, right? So you figure soundtrack, she was in the Blues Brothers. She had a brief comeback in 80 when she did United Together, when she left Atlantic and signed with, Arista, when she went to Clive. And, duets with George Michael. I mean, Aretha Franklin, man, that voice is just timeless, bro. It's timeless. It really is. I mean, Dave, Charles, don't pay Wilson any attention. We're talking about the timelessness of Aretha Franklin's voice, the woman that we know as the Queen of Soul.
Charles?
I mean, basically, you hit it on the head. Legendary, for decades. I mean, her voice just, come on, Wilson. Her voice is just phenomenal and just fit every era that could be music. So, I mean, when she does her music, it's music for all time. It can't be bound to one span of range. I mean, if you listen to this RESPECT, I almost spelled it wrong. That song is just as hot now as it was back then. I mean, her music just is timeless. And she could go on forever. If it wasn't for the end of her life, she could still be doing stuff.
Man, I think the last big
Voice
thing
class.
Aretha did, and Dave, you remember this as a Grammy guy, is when Luciano Pavarotti would perform, and she stepped in literally with no rehearsal whatsoever and sang Nessun Dorma. Now, let's be real about it. For people who know Nessun Dorma, she sang like a real soulful urban version that like nobody else would sing. But the fact that she got up there and was confident enough and had the voice in order to hit those notes, much respect to Aretha Franklin, man. I mean
that was Aretha. I mean, Aretha would let nobody could stand up to Aretha, you know, and she felt it in her heart. Nobody could stand up to her vocally. She was on top of everything. And, you know, her mindset was like that. That she was the best. I mean, she knew that she was the best, and we knew that she was the best. I mean, it's like, you know, I hear so many folks talking about Whitney, and I know that Whitney had a good voice and everything like that, but it wasn't Aretha. I mean, you know, I don't know any female vocalist, maybe even any male vocalist either, that can match Aretha's feeling, her nuances, and just the little subtleties that she puts in music. She was the best. I mean, I think it was you, Tim, years and years ago, you asked me who was my favorite vocalist, and I was naming some people. I don't know who I said, but when you look at the body of her work and like you say, the people that she is done duets with and choirs she sang with, I mean, it's hard to find anybody that you can say is better than Aretha.
Well, it's funny when you talk about Whitney Houston, right? Because that's another one that's close to me, because she literally was born like maybe 2 weeks before I was. We were raised in the same city. Whitney Houston had a pop voice. Whitney Houston's voice was great, but it didn't give me the feeling, the emotional feeling I got listening to Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin's music hit you in the soul. Didn't just hit you in the ear, it hit you in the soul, like, wow. From a male vocalist, man, I mean, you think, and I'm just spitballing right now, Marvin Gaye was good, but Marvin Gaye didn't have, I mean, he didn't have the ultimate male voice. Smokey was way up here. Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you had Donny Hathaway, you had, you know, people like that. I mean, you know, I think when you had asked me years ago, I said Stevie Wonder. This is when Luther was out, but Stevie has more range to me, but it's a crapshoot.
Marvin Sapp.
Who's that?
Marvin Sapp.
Good, Marvin Sapp.
Marvin Sapp is good.
Marvin Sapp is good. I'm not poo-pooing Wilson. I mean, any contribution you get out of Wilson that's like contemporary stuff, you know, you take it, man. You know, Wilson.
And there's certain contemporary stuff. This is why it's such a point of pride for Jennifer Hudson that she was picked by Aretha to say, yeah, you could do this role, because she felt that she was close enough to her. And so for Jennifer Hudson, that was like the mountaintop.
But at the same time, what other actress, you know, at the time, Cynthia was not a bigger name at that point in time. And I'm sure, you know, as big as Aretha is, you got people telling her, like, who's best to play you? They can sing like you. And we're talking, you know, you're not going to pluck out some unknown, you know, because that's hard. You know, the right people are saying, who's out there right now that can act, but can also sing, and maybe has a physical, resemblance. They can play you. You say you can only do top 5. It's almost like, not to shift gears, it's like when they were doing Black Panther, at that point in time, Chadwick was number 1. You know, it wasn't like it was you choosing like a Morris Chestnut or Wesley Snipes. You're going with who's hot right now. And at the time when Aretha chose Jennifer was I wouldn't say the hottest person right now, but the right person to do it, because no one knew of Cynthia Erivo was not a bigger name at that point in time. You know, it's like she's the hot girl now.
And also Jennifer had done the Dreamgirls movie, so she had some experience with that era of music. But she, like Tim said, their lives weren't similar, but Jennifer grew up hard in Chicago, where Aretha grew up hard in Detroit. It was that Midwestern thing. And there are certain pockets where great voices come from: Philadelphia, Detroit, Chicago, New Orleans. Those are the pockets where you get some of the best performers from. So their lives were, close to each other.
Right, and also, and don't forget, Jennifer has that Oscar. So when you talk about the bankability of Jennifer Hudson is bringing something to the table. And having done Dreamgirls, Cats, and other roles where she's had to perform, I think the timing of this, I'm expecting Jennifer Hudson to kill this role, depending on the screenplay.
Can I just say the problem I have is that I know her family is behind this one with Jennifer Hudson.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if they're going to soften up the C.L. Franklin piece, if they're gonna whitewash it and make it a little smoother. That could destroy the movie, because you got to have rawness.
You can't have opposites, as we saw with United States of Billie Holiday. This makes you rethink Lady Sings the Blues.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't make me think it. It makes me think that U.S. versus Billie Holiday is far superior. It's a better screenplay. Yeah. I think Audra Day is miles ahead of Diana Ross. And Diana Ross is a significant artist, right? So I'm not poo-pooing Diana Ross. But Audra Day, Dave, you've seen this movie.
Yeah, I've seen the movie, and Andrea and I are friends, and I couldn't, she made me cry watching that movie, just because the pride of a friend of mine doing that was like fantastic. But then to know that, this woman, not an actress really, maybe she's done some things here and there on stage, but nothing really. And she, the portrayal of her husbands and the life and the gritty side of it, where Motown, because of Barry Gordy and Diana Ross, they softened it, and
big time.
I don't know.
But you're right, Dave. Like, obviously, we know Jennifer is gonna bring the thunder with the singing. Now it's a question of screenplay, because after people see the 8 episodes in Genius Aretha, we don't know what aspect Respect is going to talk about. Obviously,
what period they're going to cover,
or how stretch of the period, because we know CL's in there, we know Ted White's in there because of the early photos. Will they go on later on? And and Jennifer has the ability physically, as Aretha gained weight, to go there if she needed to, to go there if they wanted to show the transformation, but then at the same time, like you said, the stories, if you start toning down what people are going to learn from the 8 episode series, and you're like, oh, they didn't talk about this, they didn't talk about that, they just kind of threw it out there and just left it alone. It's like, what's the point of having Forrest Whitaker play such a major role if you're not going to go there?
Yeah.
It's like you got an Emmy winner in Courtney B. Vance, you got an Oscar winner in Forrest Whitaker, so you got the appropriate people for the appropriate platform, So now it's like, okay, if you're gonna bring Forrest, you're gonna have him give him more to do. He just can't be in there and not go as far as what Courtney's doing.
It's like reading a book. It's like reading a book before you see the movie. If you read a book before you see the movie, you're gonna say, "Oh, this is not that good."
And I was gonna say, we keep sleeping. Forrest has an Oscar. Jennifer has an Oscar, and in this one, Courtney B has an Emmy. And Cynthia Erivo has an Emmy. So one works best in one medium, and I think the big screen Respect version is going to do what it's going to do. I would not be surprised, depending on the screenplay, because we'll see.
And the direction. We got
the director is Liesl Tommy. First time director. So I don't know. I'm not poo-pooing Liesl Tommy, but basically, they've given her two really distinguished actors to play the two major roles in the film. So I think, like I said, I would be anxious to come back and revisit this after we've had an opportunity to see Respect in August and be like, okay, my intuition tells me is that one works better for one medium, the other will work better in the other medium. And it depends on, again, the screenplay and the focus of the story on what periods they try to cover. Do they do the Ray model where we started off in a certain period and then we flash it back and keep the story there for about 2/3 of the movie and then have some end scene where we show Aretha a little later in the life doing something? I don't know. I don't know what the screenplay is, but that's what I suspect they will try to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We got a couple of minutes left. The other film, and we will definitely talk about this one, is that they are in the process right now of pre-production of a Marley film, working on the screenplay of that. That film, and this is a conversation Dave, and I will give Dave all the credit publicly because Dave is the one who once set me down and gave me a philosophy that we should look at any artist over their peak 10 years. Remember that conversation, Dave?
Yes,
and
I do.
I kept that, and that's to this day how I judge artists. So I think about the best 10 years of Stevie Wonder, the best 10 years of Michael Jackson, Prince, Janet Jackson, and you get an artist's totality at their creative peak over one decade. And with this Marley film, I use that analogy. Marley's rise was literally 10 years from like 1970 to 1980. So I'm expecting the Marley film to take place the bulk of the film is going to be those 10 years, and there might be some flashbacks, but we're going to learn everything we need to know about Catch a Fire, Exodus, and all of the other classic albums that he created, and all the drama and all the women that my man Bob Nestor Marley partake with during that time period. So looking forward to that one. Wilson, do we have anything other than they've just brought a director and a screenwriter on? There's been no casting news on Marley yet, right?
No. I think, if you're going to go actor, you can easily look at Kevin Harrison Jr. How tall is Bob Marley?
Bob Marley was hot. Oh, my producer is asleep.
He was about 5'7", 5'8". He was.
You need to find somebody Jamaican to play this role, and that one's going to be tough.
You could do that, but it's like, what about like a guy like Dave East who could play the role, or the guy from Bridgerton?
Well, okay. Here's the problem you're going to run into. I don't care what you tell me about. Social media is going to get on you if you don't sing. If you don't get Bob Marley's music and have somebody just lip sync it, it's not going to work because you can't recreate what Bob Marley did. You just can't do it. You need the music.
I disagree.
You think you can find somebody to sing? No. Okay. All right. Okay. Heather, can they find somebody who can just sing Bob Marley's music? Do we need Bob Marley's?
Here's the thing: if it won't work on stage,
Marley's music.
You don't want to see it in film. You're saying because they do this on stage all the time, and they get somebody who can do the voice.
Okay.
So if it works for theater, it should work for film. You're not gonna have somebody on theater on stage, and then you have the background play the music, and you up there lip singing like audience will be like, get out of here.
It won Jamie Foxx an Oscar. That's all I'm telling you. You telling me it's not popular? Jamie won an Oscar lip syncing Ray Charles.
They didn't want to give it to him for Collateral. They didn't want to give it to him for Collateral, so they chose the better of the two.
All right. We're gonna leave that there. Genius Aretha debuts tomorrow on National Geographic. I'm just keeping it real with all of y'all. I don't know anybody that's got National Geographic. Watch it on Hulu the next day. So everybody keeps coming to me talking about, I ain't got no National Geographic. I said, don't worry about it.
That's what they said about Underground, and they were like finding it. Because at the end of the day, who remembers WGN? Nobody, but we all saw Underground when it aired.
Watch this. Yes, watch it on Hulu starting on Monday. But it debuts tomorrow night Wilson, before we get out of here, tell people where they can follow you and read your content, man.
You can follow me at blackfilmandtv.com for all content. Just look for it there.
Dave Dickinson, where can people check you out with Sunday Mimosa?
On Sirius XM. That's on the app and on your radio, SiriusXM.com.
And Charles Kirkland Jr., where can people read your reviews, brother?
My reviews are always posted at thefilmgordon.com, and you can also go to the DC Film Life on social media for my musings.
All righty. And as I tell you guys, please see something good at the movies. Genius Aretha's debuts tomorrow. We didn't even get a chance to really talk about, all of the Marvel stuff. There's plenty of good stuff on TV. Just find something. Stay safe. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. And until next week, we'll be back with more of The Big Show. Thank you, fellas, for everything today. Great show, man. You guys take care.